Ron DeSantis' big 2024 announcement did not go quite as planned yesterday. Twitter Spaces repeatedly crashed during the call as upwards of 700,000 users tried to enter the space, with both DeSantis and moderator David Sachs dropping off at different points. Musk eventually ended the space after about 20 minutes of technical difficulties.
Governor DeSantis first drew my attention and support when I saw how he responded to the COVID pandemic and refused to believe what we now know to be the many falsehoods that government experts and their media mouthpieces were feeding us. He kept Florida's schools open and its economy thriving, while my state of California chose 2 years of learning loss and lockdowns that we have yet to fully.
Let's see. So,
Here we go.
yeah, I think so.
Just to simplify this, I think we're just going to use some people in the room.
Now, DeSantis has released an official video kicking off his campaign before the Spaces snafu. Let's watch some of that.
Truth must be our foundation, and common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue. In Florida, we proved that it can be done. We chose facts over fear, education over indoctrination, law and order over rioting and disorder. We held the line when freedom hung in the balance. We showed that we can and must revitalize America. We need the courage to lead and the strength to win. I'm Ron DeSantis, and I'm running for president to lead our great American comeback.
Joining us now to weigh in on the big night is Semaphor's Dave Weigel. Hello, Dave.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So give us your take. Obviously, the technical issues were kind of widely criticized by mainstream media on one hand. On the other hand, the glitches were a result of, just the level of interest there was. The number of people in the spaces was, I think, crashing the servers. So on one hand, maybe that's a good problem to have. But what was your impressions of how it all went down?
Well, as you all know, and as I know, conservatives would love a world where the mainstream media is irrelevant and where candidates can talk directly in a place like a Twitter space. So he got credit for trying. I'm in New Hampshire now. I just talked to the House Majority Leader who's endorsed DeSantis, and his take, which I think is pretty common, is I wish that had gone better. And one thing he says, I hope Elon cut him a big check after that space. But the premise of DeSantis taking questions from David Sachs and other people who are pretty friendly. I think Chris Rufo, he's literally appointed onto the new college board. What impressed conservatives was, hey, this guy talked for an hour on these subjects, had coherent answers that I can't imagine Donald Trump giving. I'm giving him lots of credit for trying. I don't think it added a lot to DeSantis' image outside of this conservative base that loves him already. But I'm not seeing people say I'm done with him because of this glitch. It does seem a little bit protesting too much to keep saying that only the media cared. I think the 300,000 or so people who dropped off the call because it wasn't working probably cared that they couldn't hear it.
Yeah, in fact, I ended up entering a Twitter Spaces that was dominated by conservative voices across the spectrum, people like Gorka and Kim.com, a lot of big Twitter personalities, but people also from the more political sphere. And this is a friendly audience, definitely a DeSantis curious audience. And they were saying that they were disappointed because the sell of the Twitter Spaces was supposed to be that it was more of an actual debate. They were expecting more of a town hall format. They were expecting him to take questions that weren't purely friendly softballs, I think they characterized them as, from obvious supporters, and that even though that might not be what you expect from a normal presidential launch, that DeSantis might have been undercut somewhat by the expectations that the medium created around him. Have you heard anything like that? And what do you make about the substance of DeSantis's remarks in the context of the call?
Well, the substance wasn't anything new, and the reporters who've been covering him for a while, listening to his speeches, have heard this version of the stump speech before. Frankly, not the best version. I don't think anybody delivers a text in a more inspiring way in a conference call than they do when they're surrounded by 5,000 people at a Turning Point USA conference. So it wasn't new. It was specific. DeSantis made points that I think are instantly dismissed by a lot of folks on the left in the media. And when he talks about the woke mind virus, it does not make a lot of sense to somebody who thinks it's all ridiculous. But he articulated everything that has made him popular with the conservative movement. This is a guy who understands the left and has a plan to dismantle it. But you're right; he did not deal with criticism in the town hall. He has, in a way that he shined in other forums. I mean, the fact that DeSantis can go toe to toe with a reporter at a press conference, I think one underrated event in his rise or his kind of melding with conservative base was the 60 Minutes report on him, where he fought back. He challenged the premise. They had a report that didn't say what it was going to say. He can do that. So launching in this kind of friendly format, I don't think showed all of his strengths. But look, a typical campaign launch is a candidate on stage giving his stump speech, doing selected media interviews afterward. It was not different in that way. But a lot of candidates, when they announce, want to reach somebody who's not convinced yet. I don't know who that was. I think there are a lot of just conservatives who, because they hate the mainstream media so much and because he tried to get around it, are giving him credit for something that didn't really build or add to what he has already.
Yeah, so DeSantis has to overcome Trump to get the nomination. It is interesting. Everyone's kind of, taking sides a little bit on the conservative camp. Elon Musk pretty firmly in the DeSantis camp. He said before that he would not support Donald Trump, but he would support DeSantis. I think this is him signaling that he's pretty all in for DeSantis. Trump and Musk don't have a great relationship. Trump has made fun of Musk, possibly vice versa. Does this, as the battle lines are being drawn, because, woke, you talk about woke mind virus, right? That's a tactic to win. That's not something, if he's talking about that in the general election campaign, he's obviously making a serious mistake. But he's talking about that in the primary campaign because he has to win in that context. So how is your thinking changing about the likelihood of him being able to do that? Because I see people going back and forth. There's a lot of, right after the midterms, it was like Trump's done. DeSantis has this clear path. He's being anointed by conservative media. Then he got some bad press for a couple weeks. Trump was back in the news cycle. What are the realistic odds at this point?
Yeah, if you trace the period you're talking about, the midterms happen. Trump's endorsed candidates, his high-profile endorsed candidates, do very poorly, lose the Senate majority, which they expected to get, and DeSantis peaks at that point. His victory is so impressive in Florida that a lot of conservatives just tuning in, not necessarily junkies, people who've heard of him say, this guy looks like he can win and Trump can't. I do think that idea has been lost over the last 6 months, both because I think of just a natural entropy from people living their lives since the midterms, and also the last 6 months, DeSantis has used his supermajority to pass conservative legislation, which delights the primary voters we're talking about, but which has changed his image. I think he has changed from the governor who kept Florida open, which is a big focus of this town hall, big focus of what Sachs was talking about, to the not just the fight with Disney, but raising the parental rights / don't say gay law for all high schoolers instead of just middle schoolers, changing the law so that he can run for president without resigning as governor, the 6-week abortion ban. I mean, just a lot of things that he's passed. He's I think, as the image is filled in for people who are paying a little attention to this. And again, I'm in New Hampshire where presidential candidates are not getting big crowds yet. Most people are not paying attention. I think his image has changed, where he is a resolute conservative governor who'd be probably the most conservative president in American history. That is different from, I think, the image that got him that landslide in Florida. I mean, he had a weak opponent, but also he was the governor who was cleaning up after a hurricane. He had kept the state open. He kept your business open. As that memory fades and it's replaced by DeSantis, the culture warrior, he is very compelling on that message. But that is not. I mean, you were saying, you talked about the woke virus. Is that a winning message in November 2024? It might not be. That is the risk of being in this bubble. It's a different kind of bubble. If you are arguing with the mainstream media, it's obnoxious. You can dunk on them. I spent some of this call talking about Vanity Fair headlines, etc. But you're not talking to anyone who doesn't agree with you. I mean, if you can imagine, Bernie Sanders launching with, instead of a giant rally, a conference call where he took questions from Cornel West and Sean King And folks like that, I mean, Brano worked for the campaign. I don't think that would have been as effective as saying, look, I'm a mass appeal populist candidate who can reach voters who don't even think they agree with me. I'm going to fight for somebody I don't know. I think that's more compelling as somebody who's covered campaigns for a while than proving for the umpteenth time you are a resolute culture warrior, social conservative who's going to destroy the left from inside the White House. Okay, we knew that already. We knew that even before the conference call. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, I heard a number of people say in both the Twitter spaces that I was in and elsewhere on the internet, a call-in that I had afterward, that they were very disappointed that there was absolutely no mention of the war in Ukraine. And with anti-war sentiment being such a motivator for people on both sides of the aisle and attracting a lot of folks to the candidacy of RFK Jr., that did seem like an omission. Do you think that that sort of thing is purposeful because it has been a kind of a hot button issue for DeSantis, one of his biggest faux pas, as the mainstream media at least put it over the course of the past few months, was him describing it as a territorial dispute?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because remember the timeline of that faux pas. He had not commented on Ukraine anyway. He wasn't taking questions from reporters who were asking him about it, and the Florida press corps wasn't asking every day. But Fox News, Tucker Carlson asked about it. He put out a statement responding, and then had to clean it up when he talked to other interviewers. And I think that is what happens if you're kind of in the veal pen. If you're a candidate talking to people who think you're incredible and who think that you're right about everything, you don't get the ideas just tested and reshaped and hardening steel the way that a candidate dealing with the media does. I'm not making a pitch for him to talk to everyone in the liberal media, the mainstream media. I'm saying that you end up not realizing how something's going to land outside the room if you're just inside the room talking to your fan base, this is not going to be a problem for him giving a speech to a room of caucus goers who really like him. But yeah, that's a great example. Not talking about Ukraine. You're not going to talk about every single thing in your launch. But that does leave a question out there. Okay, is there's a subject here that burned him that he's not as confident in talking about? It's a fair question. I mean, I think there's bipartisan dissatisfaction with even the way that Joe Biden takes questions, how many interviews he gives. He will go back and forth with somebody who challenges the premise of one of their policies, and that's important.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.